All right, it is 1 minute past the hour. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whenever you're listening to this. This is George Spalding. I am the Executive VP at Pink Elephant, and the title of today's webinar is DevOps Myths, Misconceptions, and Certification. We've got lots to talk about, and we don't have a whole lot of time, so let's get rolling. So our agenda. So we're going to talk about the fact that IT in general today is really has more than one persona, if you will. It's not always the one that we think is really the effective one. So we'll get to that in a minute. And then we have we're going to talk about DevOps, but we're also going to try and understand that DevOps is actually the culmination or the outcome of a lot of different elements. It's the outcome of processes that are already in place that are mature and realistic, and then it's the outcome of lean and adoption of lean principles and lean thinking and acting, and then a really mature look at the concept of release management and deployment. All of these things enter into the picture. Talk a little bit about IT value streams. Talk about Agile, because Agile is one of the most important inputs into DevOps. And then finally, we'll get to a little bit about DevOps and moving things into production. And to close off today, we'll talk a little about certification, which is actually kind of new in this conversation about DevOps. Okay. IT basically has at least two cultures. There's the one on the left, which tends to be all about the customer. It tends to be the customer who's saying, here's what I want, here's what I need, and then moving a little towards center, here's what the business needs, here's what the business needs to succeed, the voice of the business. In the world of Agile, we call the voice of the customer user stories. The voice of the customer words come out of lean. But basically what we're really talking about here is that they want an IT department that can respond quickly to urgent business needs. And they pretty much think everything is urgent, but they want to respond. They want quick response. They want us to be responsive. We use other words, but basically they want us to be responsive. When they ask for something, they want to get it in a reasonable period of time or be told why, whether it's money or resources or skills or talent or whatever reason that it, quote, can't be done. That's a whole different conversation. We're going to get into that a little bit. And this generates what we call a product backlog. Now, in most of the way we talk, the word backlog is negative, but this actually comes out of Agile. And a product backlog in Agile is basically the entire collection of all the user stories and the user wishes, what they want in this product. Whatever product we're talking about, we get lots of input from lots of different users. They have lots of desires and wishes, some requirements, some wishes, and that all generates into a bunch of user stories, which in its entirety becomes the product backlog. So we'll call it the wish list. Now, on the other side of this, we have, in many cases, depending which type of organization you are, you have legislation, you have compliance issues that you must do. There is no question, there's no option, it's not negotiable, you have to do it. At the same time, we're expecting IT and IT operations to give us a very stable, secure, can't be hacked, reliable, available infrastructure and the services that run on top of that infrastructure. We want it to be rock solid. We want it to be secure. We never want it to go down. It should be up 24/7, no questions asked. And then there's the voice of the process in here, because we've got a lot of internal processes that the customer base, the business, they don't really know about that. They don't know about our internal processes, and they don't understand that. So we really have this dual nature where those two sheep or goats are butting heads, rams, I guess, are butting heads. And we've got this one, on the one side, we have this respond quickly to urgent needs from the business. On the other side, absolutely keep it up and running. Stability, reliability, availability are the big deal. Okay. So then we have this discussion about speed. We have a discussion about doing things fast and the ability to get things done in a quick basis or a rapid basis. And a lot of that conversation tends to be because of project lead times and the fact that we use perhaps a waterfall method for application development, which means that we work for months at a time, and then finally we have this big moment when we do the big release, and hopefully, if everything went perfectly, the release goes in, it works, and provides the value that we were always hoping it would be. The truth, of course, is that often that throughout that period of time when we were working on this, no value was received, tons of resources were involved, lots of money was being spent. So this whole waterfall methodology is starting to fall by the wayside. Sorry about that. Fall by the wayside, and now we're getting into the concept where we basically want value to actually be that we want the value to actually work and be effective on a timely basis, on an ongoing and timely basis. So we want value along the way, and we want perhaps agility. So we start talking about the concept of Agile, and we start talking about Agile as an environment, and we'll talk a little more about that as we get further along. But what we're really looking for then is not just agility and not just moving fast, but moving fast with specific direction, knowing where we're going and knowing why we're doing it, and ignoring things that we don't want to do, that we don't need to do. In the world of lean IT, the key is that time is the key production factor within IT. And that's perhaps something we never sat around and thought about, but in the end, the truth is that time is what we have the most control over in IT, and that's really what we need to look for. As we move forward, what is it that's going to increase time, which will help us increase customer value? Is enterprise IT a myth? Well, in other words, is there one IT? Is there one IT, an IT for the enterprise? On one side, we have time and money, and we have projects being created. We have limitations, perhaps. On the other side, we have this desire for incredible stability and incredible control. So the concept there is, are these two things in opposition? We've got the old plan, build, run concept, which we've always had. We've had that for decades, plan, build, run, and that's how we run IT. Now, of course, we throw in, well, what is it that we're planning, building, and running? Well, normally, those things come from the customer. They become customer demands. So those customer demands and the constraints that are involved in those are mostly time and money and resources as to how we can operate and meet those customer demands. On the other side, we're getting huge pressure on the run side for stability and control. That becomes a problem as we move forward. So we talking here about value streams. We talk about the demand, plan, build, run. We have the services and that we have in place and orchestrating those services and making them possible. We have the discipline of what most of us are involved in called IT service management, often ITIL. And then we have application development, which tends to dovetail into the world of project management. And then we support things after the fact. So that red line that runs up and down is really the deployment and release line. That's the point at which we have to take these things and then move them over, move them into production. So that red line becomes deployment, becomes release, and it also is the point where, unfortunately, we have some technical debt. And that technical debt, what that means is that we take short-term solutions that work for now, solve the immediate problem, usually in the name of efficacy and speed to get things moving. But in the end, we have to pay that debt back because we have to do it right at some point down the road. We have to basically, we're taking very expedient solutions which we're going to have to pay for later on. That's what technical debt really means. And we do this a lot in IT, usually under great pressure to get things out the door and move things into production and get them up and running because we want that value to start paying off because we've had so much time with just work, effort, and resources being consumed. So technical debt is a big part of this conversation. So what we now have here is a picture of what I call the current state of IT and what I call the IT factory. So think about a factory. You don't have to, it's not too much to think about. On the left side, we have the high standardization because it's the stuff we do every day, all the time. We do this stuff all the time. Regulatory compliance, can't avoid it, have to do it. Virus definition upgrades, can't avoid it, have to do it. We're very cost efficient on this side. We're squeezing the last dime out of the way we do it. It becomes commoditization, commodities. The amount of risk is very low because we're very used to it. We know exactly what we're doing over on the left side. It's a very formal, very mature process. In the world of the factory, this is called made to stock. There's no customization. We're making things that we're selling exactly. We're shipping them exactly as we always do. No change, total commodity. We do it all the time. Great. Now we move into the middle, and which is in our world where we have a service catalog, and it's possible that we have, within this service portfolio, we have little modular services or pieces of services that we've created that are actually discrete services that we, inside IT, we know about, and that if a customer asks for a service, it might be possible for us to actually assemble the pieces, these little sub-services, into a shippable service product that we can then assemble to order. So we have the pieces already created, and we assemble them and ship them out. And that makes the customer happy, and it's probably pretty efficient, and involves having these things already in place or building them as we need them, but building them in such a way that we can reuse them as parts of other services in the future. That's great. Over on the right side, we have a total craftsman look, complete blank sheet of paper, where we basically start projects and application development, and we start those projects and application development in literally a blank sheet of paper. We sit down and say, okay, what do you want? And then we start working it up. It requires, in many cases, very specialized knowledge. It is a completely tailored solution. It is totally made to order. In some cases, it's even engineered to order, requiring specific hardware, something totally different. There's going to be a lot of variance between each one that we do. It's going to be very low volume. It's going to be very expensive. And there's going to be a high degree of risk because we're doing something brand new every time. Unfortunately, in today's IT, when we start a new project or a new application internally developed, it's usually on the right side. It's usually a blank sheet of paper where we're sitting there and talking through the specs from day one and just building it to order, making it to order, engineering it to order, everything nothing out of the box, totally custom solution. It introduces a severe element of risk. It makes for problems when we get to the release phase, we get to the deployment phase, and not enough testing went on, that type of thing. Okay, so we have some problems when we get to that. So now I'm going to introduce a new concept. That's we looked at where IT was, now we're going to talk about lean. So lean has been around, well, technically, the lean principles have been around 100 years. But the phrase The Toyota production system was actually coined back in the 80s by a consultant. And Lean IT has really only been around as a phrase for maybe a decade. But Lean in terms of services and actually applying Lean manufacturing principles to services has been around since like the year 2000, where basically the first group, the first industry to start adopting Lean manufacturing principles to a service environment was healthcare. Healthcare started embracing Lean principles starting around 2000, and what that meant was, and they did it primarily for cost efficiency and primarily, I believe, to eliminate errors and to make sure there were no errors. And I think as a healthcare consumer, I think eliminating errors is a wonderful idea in the world of healthcare. So now let's move that into Lean IT. By the way, it wasn't the IT department in the healthcare providers that was adopting it. It was actually the clinical side. IT kept working the same way they always did. And only now are we getting IT departments to move towards Lean IT. So Lean IT is the extension of Lean manufacturing and Lean services principles to the development and management of IT products and services. Its goal is to continuously improve the value delivered by IT organizations to their customers and the professionalism of IT people. This comes out of the Lean IT Association, which is only about a year or so old. Pink Elephant is one of the founding members of the Lean IT Association. So Lean is a different way of thinking and acting. It's about increasing customer value. That is the number one absolute aspect of Lean. That's what it's all about. We have to increase customer value if we're moving to Lean. It's about eliminating waste. And when you look at the IT processes in the frame or with the lens of Lean, you discover that we have tremendous amounts of waste that results in tremendous amount of wasted time being the key production value in IT. Management becomes a facilitator. All the employees are involved. Continual improvement is one of the driving forces. We're looking to preserve value and do less work. Less work. That's what we're looking for. Less work. So we have the top little triangle there. We're looking for quality, on-time delivery, perhaps faster delivery, and with a controlling costs. Though the purpose of Lean is never to control costs, the result of Lean ends up being a lot of cost efficiency. So there's a couple of things in here just in time. This is a recognition, and this is something that it's kind of funny in the world of IT, that we have a capacity in IT. We talk about capacity management, but every time we talked about capacity management, we talked about enough disk space, enough processor cycles, enough bandwidth, enough people, resources to maintain the infrastructure, things like that. But in truth, all of the processes inside IT have capacities at each stage within the process. So we don't want to overwhelm that capacity because it doesn't do any good. Things don't go any faster if we overwhelm the capacity. In fact, they tend to go slower. So we want to operate in a just-in-time environment where the person can pull or take something the next piece of work as they move along the process. Shidoka is the concept of simply doing it right the first time. You know how in IT for the last 30 years or so that I've been involved, we never had time to do it right the first time, but we always had time to go back and fix it. Well, in the world of Lean, that's considered waste. So we don't ever want to go back and fix it because we don't want it to need fixing. We want it to do it right the first time. In the world of Lean, incidents are considered waste. Not because of the way we operate or the way we fix them, but because they shouldn't really happen. Okay, Hajunka is about leveling and trying to take the peaks and valleys out. Kaizen is about basically continuous improvement and trying to focus in and fix one problem at a time. And those, we won't go into all the other details. In the world of Lean, at the center, as I said before, is customer value. Without question, it's customer value. And what you and I call processes and process flows, Lean calls a value stream. And that value stream is we try and map out the value stream and then wring out all the waste and wring out all the efficiency out of that value stream / process, thus resulting in steady flow. Things keep moving. The person pulls the next unit of work when they're ready to receive it, and always striving for perfection. The world of lean doesn't accept the fact that, well, there's a good enough. In the world of lean, there's a belief that we can always improve. No matter how good we get, we can always improve. Now we're moving into a whole nother bailiwick, one called Agile. We're moving into Agile, Agile software development. A lot of words here, a lot of new words. So we have the user stories, and the user stories are, as I said before, kind of each user, what they would like out of this product. Here's what I want. No, here's what I want. Here's what I want. Here's what I want. So every user has a story and a desire or wish as to what they want. All of those user stories go into what we call the product backlog, which is really the user wish list. Then a decision is made, usually by the product owner, as to what we're going to do in terms of this product, in terms of how many of those user features, if you will, are going to be put into this release. And then, so which of the user stories are going to be part of this release? So that's part of the product owner. And then we divide up this release into something called sprints. And we can have 2, 3, 4, 5 sprints. The sprints are the ideal part about the sprints are that they are that they basically are subsets, if you will, of a release. And at the end of a sprint, I have a ship-ready feature set for that product after each sprint. So I have a little piece ready to go, ready to ship, ready to ship, ready to ship. Until once the combination of all the sprints is done, then we can do a release. So there's a daily Scrum meeting where everybody stands around. Basically, it's a stand-up meeting, very short, 15 minutes at the beginning of the day. The sprint backlog is basically the list of things that come from the release backlog. What subset are in Sprint 1, what subset are in Sprint 2, subset in Sprint 3, etc. The project manager of the whole thing is called the Scrum Master, and there's a burn-down chart, which we obviously don't have time to go into all of the Agile functionality. But what it does is, primarily in the world of Agile, it allows us to do release and deployment in a much shorter time frame with a much, if you will, less feature-rich application, but it's coming out every, say, 30 days. So I'm doing releases every 2 weeks, every 30 days, every month and a half. And as I release, the customer starts to receive the value from the last month and a half of effort. We don't wait 6 to 12 months to get the value out of a big waterfall development project, but rather we know that it's happening. It's able to be tested in a much smaller scale, so the testing is probably more accurate. It's not gigantic. The testing is probably better. We now are able to release something that actually indeed comes out and works and starts to deliver value after, say, a month. And then the next month, another release comes out, more value. Next month, another release comes out, more value. So we get to something which we call continuous deployment, where we're not doing this big annual release, but rather we're doing a monthly release of the product that we all decided or that we agreed that we were going to ship. We just release it a piece at a time, a sprint/release at a time until finally the whole product is out. And that basically is the concept, in 5 minutes, of what Agile is about. So it's got Agile, then we have products down to releases. Releases, subset of release would be a sprint. And then within the sprints, we're going to have daily scrums, and we're going to release these. We're going to have releases every 2 weeks, every 30 days, whatever. Okay? So we have some understanding. But in order to really get Agile, and this is a quote from Puppet Labs. So I love the thing that I've underlined there. Adopting Agile development processes without improving operational reliability or communication between developers and operations only makes the problem worse. So in other words, there are some prerequisites. And I think that that's important for us to understand, because I've actually seen organizations, I've been on site at organizations where they basically said, ooh, DevOps, wow, sounds great, I'll take two. But they didn't fully understand it. DevOps is actually the culmination, the result of a number of different disciplines, well practiced and fairly mature, before you can even begin to reach the concept of DevOps. So let's start talking about those different pieces. So in the world of IT service management, we've been in this world for a while. We talk about services. We talk about a service portfolio. And that service portfolio, we assume that there's lots of services and that we've got continual service improvement operating. Each service has an owner. We're hopefully in the world of business relationship management. Now, on top of all that, we've got new technology coming out all the time. The business has new markets that they want to get into, and they aren't there yet. So we end up with basically net new customer demand for services that we are not meeting. Now, in the middle of all that, we have to filter that through, what about risk? Is there too much risk for us to move forward? Is it too expensive to have the resources? Will there be value when I actually do produce this? And what about compliance? Is that going to mess up my whole compliance picture? Okay, so it's an art form to shove this through this filter and finally come out with a project portfolio of funded and prioritized chartered projects. And then those hopefully will move through and become part of the IT value system, whether we externalize that or whether we do it all inside. Now, here's another quick look at that factory. On the left side, we have all the customer-facing stuff. So the storefront, if you will, look across the top. We've got a storefront which sells widgets, and then we have a factory that they generate orders. The orders go to the factory makes the widgets, and then there's a delivery and support mechanism to get the widgets back to the storefront, et cetera. Okay, well, the storefront then in the world of IT represents the business relationship management side of things, which we hope dovetails well in the world of strategy management, demands, and the portfolio management, also money. We have service catalogs, request fulfillment, the service desk, incident management. These are all the customer-facing side of things inside IT. In the middle is IT. It's IT development, it's the design, security, availability, capacity, service continuity, supplier, service level management, service catalog, and then transition planning. So we design a service, we create a service. That's usually done through a project, so that's all going to be part of the project portfolio. We go through the plan build phase. We, of course, have it make sure that this is going to run on our existing infrastructure. There's always a little lessons learned going on with the CSI. And then we move into the transition phase, which is change management, release and deployment, service asset configuration management, testing, validation, evaluation of the new service/app, and then knowledge management to help us with decision support. Then we move through this line, which is the implement, release, deploy line, and now we're over into ops. And ops is basically, I've got things that go wrong, I'm monitoring it for events, I've got incidents, requests, problems that maybe things that, incidents that keep bubbling up, access and security management. All of that's part of the game that we do. We know that, we're cool with that. But what we find is that we want this deployment line, and the real question is, how does something go from the middle phase in the factory and development over into ops? What's that transition like? Obviously, in the world of IT, we'd like it to be nice and smooth and wonderful and do a whole transition planning element. But in many cases, that's not exactly what happens. So what happens in the release and deployment phase and the release and deployment processes is, the purpose is we need to plan, schedule, control the build, test, and deployment of releases and deliver the new functionality that's required by the business while maintaining the integrity of everything else we've already got. So don't mess up. Do no harm. I've already got a bunch of stuff running. I've got a running IT department and a running business. I don't want to muck that up. So in the same time, I'm going to take the plan build phase, and that's going to be dev. That's the dev phase, and I need to work on how to get it into run, because that's really the conversation around DevOps. There's also lots of functional requirements, but tons more non-functional requirements. This is kind of cute. So Jimmy on the right doesn't really understand non-functional requirements. He basically gave this lady a wagon with 4 wheels, and it goes and moves and rolls. What more do you want? And she says, you're 10 minutes late, the thing's falling apart, and where were you last Saturday? So in other words, what are these non-functional requirements? Well, when you look at the definition of a service design package and the information or inputs into a service design package from the ITIL, this is from ITIL, there's only one box that says functional requirements. And there's like 15 other boxes of non-functional requirements which are going to govern the success of the deployment of the project. Those are all going to govern the success of deployment, not just the functional requirements, not just the fact that I gave you a wagon with 4 wheels and it rolls. I need all those other things in place in order for a successful project to be released and launched. Slow down change to speed up value. What does that really mean? Well, we've been talking about speed a lot. We've been talking about going faster. Everybody wants IT to go faster. We want it to be quicker. And indeed, things like Lean allow that to happen without, which is interesting, without having anyone speed up their work. It goes faster because it eliminates the waste. So the end product is delivered sooner because there's less waste. Not because everybody just worked faster. That's not really what happens. In fact, people work pretty much at the same speed they always worked. There's just less time between everything. So we need to look at change management in a very pragmatic way. First of all, there are such a thing as low-risk standard changes. Just like anything else, change management has small, medium, and large changes. So the small changes are low risk, and those are about, they've got mature software, we know about it, there's recovery points in case it just on the off chance that it blows up, it's a standard artifact, it's basically updating a virus definition perhaps, it's definitely low risk, often these are urgent changes. It's got a different level of scrutiny, it's got a different level of approval, a different time frame, and different administration, if you will, of the change. Normal changes, which would be medium risk, are definitely going to require an actual CAB meeting, whereas standard changes did not. They were pre-approved in many cases, where we literally didn't have to ask for approval in order to do them. There's probably a schedule upon which they can be done, but as long as you meet the schedule, there's no approval needed. Whereas normal changes, while hopefully we have mature software, I need some release assurance, integration testing, a technical review, which might actually take the form of a second CAB meeting, a technical CAB meeting, so that I have all the technical stuff that doesn't have to be reviewed with the approval CAB to move forward. And then a change manager would then actually schedule the change and when it goes in. And of course, the definition in ITIL of a release is it's the culmination or the accumulation of many, many changes. So we often have to put those changes in order, and one has to be completely finished before we can start the next one, et cetera, thus combining into a release. So we basically need to understand that that change, if you want it to move faster, has to have a rigorously mature process. Most people feel that will slow down change. That's not true, because in the end, what speeds up change is how many changes go in a given time frame. That's what we really measure, not And then we also measure how long in the change process, where when something gets begun, added to the change system, a request for change goes into the process, and then how long is it until it comes out as a finished deployed change. That cycle time, if you will, within Lean, the idea behind that is to shrink it, not by doing everything faster, but by eliminating waste. So it's very possible, if we work at Lean and work at maturing processes, we will get much faster change management, much faster release and deployment, at the same time, much more secure and much more robust changes and releases all at the same time, and much higher value to the customer. DevOps brings with it the promise of automated releases. That's one everybody says, oh, DevOps, automated, that's perfect. That's what I want to do. Great, and indeed, that's a true statement. You have to understand that to automate anything, it has to be remarkably mature and set. So that I have to know exactly what happens now and then what happens next, what to check for, then move on to the next, what to check for, then move on to the next. It has to be. And it has to be that way, or it's impossible to be automated. If we have a process where for some reason it goes like, first we do this, then we do this, then we do this, then we do this, then magic happens, then we do this, then we do this. Okay, the magic tends to be a human being getting involved in making human judgments on the matter, which way to send something. That's not automation. That's not what we want. We want this to be automated from the beginning to the end. In order to pull that off, I have to have an extraordinarily mature process before I can begin the concept of automation. Automation is the payoff. It's not where we start. So, we sometimes feel that Dev and Ops are at war and that this is what the whole thing looks like. But when we really start to analyze what DevOps actually is, we find out there's a lot of inputs into DevOps. So, we start on the right side there. We've got ITSM, the ITIL processes themselves, the system development lifecycle, which is a set of processes for dev. So we've got kind of ops and dev represented there in the world of processes. Then on the other side, we've got Agile. So we basically have to have, in order to do real DevOps, we have to have good, mature IT processes in place. The development people probably already have good systems development lifecycle processes in place. We have to use Agile on the development side in order to make this work. But you discover that in order to make Agile work, you really need Lean. So I have to first start with the processes. Let's try doing this hierarchically. I start with those processes, ITSM and SDLC. I move to Lean and say, I'm going to wring the waste out of processes. I'm going to be able to visually see the success of a process, and I'm going to eliminate waste, and I'm going to do a CSI, constant improvement, with Lean. I'm going to have to deal with, of course, the theory of constraints. I only have so much money, I only have so many resources, etc. And I'm going to work on the concept of continuous integration, and then that will dovetail into Agile. Agile will have continuous integration and deployment. And then finally, I start working on the concept of automated testing and deployment. And that is DevOps in a nutshell. So there really isn't a thing to go out and buy or learn or read about in the world of DevOps. DevOps is actually the result, the payoff, if you will. So now I'm going to introduce you to something brand new. Just founded, the DevOps Agile Skills Association, or DASA. This is a brand new organization. Its mission is open participation. Anyone can participate in defining the role-based competencies. It's extendable. All the existing industry DevOps learning content has value, and DASA is going to map that content and demonstrate the relevance. It's quality assured because it's going to maintain a straightforward operating model for delivering training. Its mandate is to promote a knowledge and skills framework for DevOps based on a defined set of principles. Develop and evangelize vendor-neutral DevOps qualification programs for IT professionals. Generate interest and awareness for the need for knowledge and skills. Advance quality of training and open source certification for DevOps knowledge and skills. And map member training content to the role-based competence baseline. There are 27 organizations that have come together to found the DevOps Agile Skills Association. Pink is one of those 27 forerunner organizations. Here's Bart Simpson telling you there's no such thing as a DevOps engineer. I am not a DevOps engineer. I am not a DevOps engineer, says Bart. So what about DevOps and the skills associated with DevOps? Well, there's at least 8 of these knowledge areas that DASA is going to focus on in the Agile and DevOps world. And the business value optimization, so this is kind of there's something for everybody here, depending on what level you are in the IT world. If you're a techie, kind of a geek, there's plenty for you. If you're in middle management, there's stuff for you. And there's also enough for the executives or leadership. So there's business value optimization, business analysis, architecture and design, programming itself, continuous delivery with automated testing and deployment, test specs, infrastructure engineering, and security, risk, and compliance. These are the 8 knowledge areas that DASA is going to address in the upcoming certifications that they offer. So here is a very high-level view of the DASA qualification or certification program. Starts, as many do, at the bottom with a fundamentals course, the DevOps Fundamentals course, which is 3 days, and moves quickly into a DevOps Practitioner course, 2 days, and then into some areas of specialization. There's Enable and Scale, which is basically the implementation journey, DevOps teams, and then Specify and Verify, talking about business value optimization, business analysis, and then the Create and Deliver in the programming world for continuous delivery and security, risk, and compliance, infrastructure engineering, a little more techie over on that side. So, do these exist at this point in time? If I were you, that's what I would be asking. Do these exist? Is this available to me now? The answer is, dun, 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 dun. As of June, the DevOps Fundamentals course is being offered by Pink Elephant. These are on our website. I got this right off of our own website. The ones that have a city listed are live classes with actual human beings talking to other human beings. And the 2 that are mentioned that are virtual are online classes, but they're online and instructor delivered. They're not pre-recorded in any way. So we're delivering a live class via instructor online over the web. We operate on Central Time USA in order to do that. So these classes exist. But wait, George, what about that practitioner? So I view the practitioner as probably being available by the end of Q3. So by end of September would be my shot at when that practitioner certification will be available in DevOps. Also, this is, as I said, this DASA organization is brand new, and they are doing their global launch on April 13th, so a little less than 2 weeks from now, Wednesday, April 13th. It is an online webinar. You can register for it. It's open to the public. You can register for it at www.devopsagileskills.org. I urge you to get involved with them. I urge you to become a member. It's free. You can become part of their organization, and you can have input as well as see the benefit of the various DevOps skills. If you have any questions for me on anything we talked about, please feel free to email me directly at g.spalding@pinkelephant.com. Give me an inline tweet at gspalding11, or I'm also on LinkedIn under George Spalding. I want to thank you for your time. Thanks for sticking with me, and thanks for supporting Pink Elephant. I'll see you another time. Hope to see you. Bye-bye.